Hello and welcome to another science lecture to help you rest. Tonight we will talk about the humans of ancient Asia, specifically the story of Peking Man and Java Man. We will explore the history of how these discoveries were made and who the people were that made them. If you would like, subscribe or comment to support the channel. Before we begin, I have a question for you. If you found a mysterious fossil in your backyard, would you keep it for yourself or would you call a museum? Please let me know what you would do in the comments below. Now lie back, close your eyes, and let your shoulders relax. Let us turn our attention to the distant past. Part 1. The search for the missing link. We begin our story in the middle of the 19th century. This was a time of great change in the world of science. People were beginning to look at the natural world in new ways. They were starting to ask difficult questions about where humans came from. For a very long time, people believed that humans had always been the way they are now. They did not think that humans changed over time. But then some scientists began to find bones in the ground. These bones looked like animals that no longer existed. This made them wonder about the history of the Earth. In the year 1859, a man named Charles Darwin published a very famous book. The book was called On the Origin of Species. In this book, Charles Darwin suggested that living things change slowly over a very long time. He called this process natural selection. He said that animals that are better at surviving will have more babies, and those babies will look like their parents. Over many thousands or millions of years, a species can change completely. This was a very shocking idea for many people at the time. It meant that humans were not separate from the rest of nature. It meant that humans were related to the animals. However, Charles Darwin did not say much about humans in his first book. He waited until later to write about human evolution. But other scientists were reading his work and thinking about what it meant. One of these scientists was a man from Germany named Ernst Haeckel. Ernst Haeckel was very interested in the idea of evolution. He drew family trees of animals. He tried to show how different animals were related to each other. Ernst Haeckel had a theory about where humans came from. He believed that there must be a creature that was half ape and half human. He called this creature the missing link. Ernst Haeckel gave this missing link a scientific name. He called it Pithecanthropus allelus. This means the ape man without speech. He believed that this creature lived in the past but was now extinct. He also had a theory about where this creature lived. Charles Darwin thought that humans probably evolved in Africa because that is where the gorillas and chimpanzees live today. But Ernst Haeckel disagreed. He thought that humans evolved in Asia. He thought they came from a lost continent in the Indian Ocean called Lemuria. He thought that the gibbons and orangutans of Southeast Asia were our closest relatives. This brings us to the main character of the first part of our story. His name was Marie Eugene Francois Thomas Dubois, but he is usually just called Eugene Dubois. Eugene Dubois was born in the Netherlands in the year 1858. He was born in a town called Eisden. From a very young age, he was fascinated by nature. He loved to explore the countryside around his home. He would collect stones and plants and insects. He was very curious about how the world worked. When Eugene Dubois was a young man, he decided to study medicine. He went to the university to become a doctor. He was a very good student. He learned all about the human body. He learned about bones and muscles and organs. He was particularly interested in anatomy. Anatomy is the study of the structure of the body. After he finished his studies, he got a job at a university. He became a teacher of anatomy. He taught other students about the human body. Eugene Dubois had a good life. He had a steady job and a promising career, but he was not happy. He was bored with teaching. He did not want to spend his life in a classroom. He had read the works of Charles Darwin and Ernst Haeckel. He was obsessed with the idea of human evolution. He wanted to find the missing link. He believed the missing link was real and he believed he could find it. Most scientists at the time were looking for fossils in Europe. They found bones of Neanderthals in caves in Germany and Belgium. But Eugene Dubois thought they were looking in the wrong place. He agreed with Ernst Haeckel. He believed that the missing link would be found in the tropics. He thought that early humans would have lived in a warm climate. He believed that they lost their hair because they lived in a hot place. He looked at the map and he looked at the Dutch East Indies. The Dutch East Indies is what we now call the country of Indonesia. In the 19th century, it was a colony of the Netherlands. Since Eugene Dubois was Dutch, he knew he could go there easily. He wanted to organize a scientific expedition. He wanted the government to give him money to go to the Dutch East Indies and dig for bones. He asked his supervisors for funding. He asked the government for a grant. But everyone said no. They thought his idea was crazy. They did not believe he would find anything. They told him to stay at the university and teach anatomy. Eugene Dubois was a stubborn man. He did not like being told what to do. He was determined to go to Asia. Since he could not get money for a scientific expedition, he had to find another way. He decided to join the army. He did not want to be a soldier who fought in battles. He signed up to be a medical officer. This meant he would be a doctor for the soldiers. The Dutch army needed doctors in the East Indies. They were happy to accept him. His friends and colleagues were shocked. They told him he was making a huge mistake. They said he was throwing away his career. They said he was giving up a comfortable life for a dangerous one. The tropics were known for dangerous diseases like malaria. But Eugene Dubois did not listen. He packed his bags. He said goodbye to his job at the university. He took his young wife and his baby with him. They got on a boat and sailed to the other side of the world. The journey was long and difficult. In those days, there were no airplanes. You had to travel by ship. The ship took many weeks to reach Asia. It had to sail around Africa or through the Suez Canal. It was hot and crowded on the ship. But finally, they arrived in the Dutch East Indies. The air was hot and humid. The vegetation was thick and green. It was a completely different world from the Netherlands. Eugene Dubois was stationed on the island of Sumatra. Sumatra is a very large island. It has thick jungles and tall mountains. It has many rivers and caves. Eugene Dubois had to do his job as an army doctor. He had to take care of the soldiers who got sick. He had to treat their wounds and give them medicine. But in his free time, he started his search. He started looking for caves. He believed that early humans would have lived in caves to stay safe from wild animals. He hired local people to help him. He told them to look for bones. He explored many caves in Sumatra. He found many fossils. He found teeth of ancient animals. He found bones of rhinos and elephants and pigs. But he did not find what he was looking for. He did not find any ape men. The conditions in Sumatra were very hard. The jungle was dense and difficult to walk through. There were mosquitoes everywhere. Eugene Dubois got sick with malaria. He had high fevers and felt very weak. After a few years in Sumatra, he decided to move. He heard reports that there were better fossils on the island of Java. Java is another island in Indonesia. It is to the southeast of Sumatra. It is more open and has drier areas. Eugene Dubois asked the government to transfer him to Java. By this time, the government was starting to become interested in his work. They saw the animal fossils he was sending back to the Netherlands. They realized he was a serious scientist. They decided to give him some help. They assigned him a team of engineers and laborers. They relieved him of his medical duties so he could focus on digging. This was a big breakthrough for Eugene Dubois. Now he could spend all his time searching for the missing link. He moved his family to Java. He started looking at the riverbanks. He realized that rivers are good places to find fossils. When animals die near a river, their bones can get covered in mud. The mud protects the bones and turns them into stone over a long time. The Solo River is the longest river in Java. It winds through the center of the island. Eugene Dubois focused his attention on a place called Trinil. Trinil is a small village on the banks of the Solo River. In the dry season, the water level in the river goes down. When the water goes down, the muddy banks are exposed. This is the best time to dig. Eugene Dubois set up his camp near Trinil. He had a large team of workers. These workers were mostly local Javanese people. Some of them were prisoners who were forced to work. They used simple tools like shovels and picks. They dug into the hard earth along the river. It was the year 1891. Eugene Dubois had been in the East Indies for 4 years. He was tired and he was sick, but he kept working. The work was slow and boring. The workers dug up tons of dirt. They found many animal bones. They found the bones of extinct buffalo. They found the teeth of crocodiles. They found the shells of turtles. Eugene Dubois examined every bone carefully. He was waiting for something special. In September of 1891, the workers found something interesting. They were digging in a layer of volcanic ash and gravel. They found a tooth. It was a molar tooth. It looked like a wisdom tooth. Eugene Dubois looked at it closely. It looked very much like a human tooth, but it was also different. It was larger than a modern human tooth. The roots were thick and strong, but it did not look like the tooth of an ape. An ape tooth has a different shape. This tooth was somewhere in between. Eugene Dubois was very excited. He thought it might belong to a chimpanzee that lived in the past. At that time, nobody knew that chimpanzees never lived in Asia. He told the workers to keep digging in the same spot. He wanted to find more of this creature. A month later, in October 1891, they found something else. It was only 1 meter away from where they found the tooth. It was a piece of a skull. It was not a whole skull. It was just the top part. We call this a skull cap or a calvarium. It was the part of the skull that covers the brain. It was dark brown in color because it had been in the mud for so long. Eugene Dubois cleaned the skull cap. He held it in his hands. He could tell immediately that it was very unusual. It was thick and heavy. The bone was much thicker than the bone of a modern human. The shape was also different. A modern human skull is high and round. It has a big forehead that goes straight up. This skull cap was low and flat. It did not have a forehead. Instead, it had a very large ridge of bone above the eyes. This is called a brow ridge. The brow ridge went straight across the front of the skull like a bar. Behind the brow ridge, the skull sloped back sharply. It looked like the skull of a giant ape. But there was something else. The size of the brain case was too big for an ape. Eugene Dubois measured the volume of the skull. He poured seeds or sand into it to see how much it could hold. He calculated that the brain size was about 900 cubic centimeters. A modern human brain is about 1,400 cubic centimeters. A gorilla brain is about 500 cubic centimeters. So this creature had a brain that was right in the middle. It was twice as big as an ape brain, but smaller than a human brain. This was exactly what Eugene Dubois had been looking for. It was the perfect intermediate form. It had features of an ape and features of a human. He was sure he had found the missing link. At first, he thought it was a type of chimpanzee. He named it Anthropopithecus. This means man-ape. He wrote a report about his discovery. He sent the news back to Europe, but he knew he needed more evidence. A tooth and a skull cap were good, but they were not enough to convince the world. He needed to know what the rest of the body looked like. The rainy season came and the river rose. The water covered the digging site. Eugene Dubois had to stop working. He had to wait for the next dry season. He spent the time studying the fossils he had already found. He compared them to skeletons in books. He was more and more convinced that he was right. When the rain stopped and the water went down, he went back to to Trinil. It was now the year 1892. The workers started digging again. They removed a lot of soil. It was hard work under the hot sun. In August of 1892, they found another bone. This one was very important. It was a femur. The femur is the thigh bone. It is the long bone in your upper leg. It goes from your hip to your knee. Its femur was found about 15 meters away from the skull cap. Eugene Dubois believed it belonged to the same individual. The femur was complete. It was not broken. It looked incredibly human. If you showed this bone to a doctor today, they might think it belonged to a modern person. It was straight and strong. Eugene Dubois examined the joints at the ends of the bone. The shape of the knee joint and the hip joint tells you how an animal walks. An ape has a femur that is shaped differently because they walk on 4 legs or they climb trees. Their legs are bent. But this femur was built for standing up straight. It was built for walking on 2 legs. This changed everything. Eugene Dubois realized that this creature walked exactly like we do. It was not stooped over. It did not use its hands to walk. It stood upright. This was a major discovery. It meant that our ancestors learned to walk on 2 legs before their brains got big. The skull showed a small brain, but the leg showed a human walk. This was a confusing mix of features for scientists at the time. Many people thought the brain would get big first, but the fossils from Java showed the opposite. Eugene Dubois decided to change the name of his discovery. He remembered the name that Ernst Haeckel had used, Pithecanthropus. He added a new species name to describe the leg. He called it Pithecanthropus erectus. This translates to the upright ape man. This is the name that became famous. Most people just called it Java man. It was the first early human fossil ever found outside of Europe. It was the first evidence that humans had a deep history in Asia. Eugene Dubois was overjoyed. He felt that his gamble had paid off. He had left his home and his job. He had risked his health and his family. And now he had the proof in his hands. He had the missing link. He carefully packed the fossils. He packed the tooth and the skull cap and the femur. He also packed the animal bones found at the site. There were thousands of them. He wanted to bring them all back to Europe. He wanted to show them to the scientific community. He wanted to be recognized for his great discovery. However, the work was not finished yet. He had to document everything. He drew maps of the river. He drew diagrams of the soil layers. He wanted to prove that the bones were very old. He showed that they came from the same layer as the extinct animals. If the Java man lived at the same time as the extinct elephants, then the Java man must be extinct too. He wrote detailed descriptions of the geology. He wanted to make sure that no one could say he made a mistake. The excavation at Trinil continued for a while longer, but they did not find any more parts of the Java man. They found more animal bones, but no more human bones. Eugene Dubois decided it was time to go home. He had been in the tropics for 8 years. His health was poor. His wife and children wanted to go back to the Netherlands. In 1895, he boarded a ship to return to Europe. He carried his precious cargo with him. He was ready to present his findings to the world. When Eugene Dubois arrived in Europe, he expected to be welcomed as a hero. He thought that scientists would praise him. He thought they would agree with his interpretation. He traveled to scientific conferences. He went to Leiden and Paris and London and Berlin. He opened his suitcase and showed the bones. He displayed the skull cap with its heavy brow ridges. He displayed the straight femur. He explained his theory that this was the ancestor of modern humans. The reaction was not what he expected. Some scientists were impressed. They agreed that it was a remarkable find, but many others were very critical. They did not believe him. They had their own theories, and they did not like his ideas. Remember that this was a time when religion and science were often in conflict. Some people did not want to believe that humans evolved from apes at all. They rejected the whole idea. Even the scientists who believed in evolution had problems with his fossils. They argued about the combination of the bones. They said that the skull looked like an ape, but the leg looked like a human. They said it was impossible for them to belong to the same creature. They suggested that Eugene Dubois had made a mistake. They said he had found the skull of a gibbon and the leg of a modern human. They said the bones must have been mixed up in the river. They pointed out that the bones were found 15 meters apart. They said that in a river bones can wash around and get mixed together. This criticism made Eugene Dubois very angry. He knew he was right. He explained that the bones were fossilized in the same way, they had the same color and the same texture. He explained that no giant gibbons ever lived in Java. He explained that the rock layer was very old, so the leg could not be from a modern human. He argued with the experts, he wrote more papers, he tried to defend his Java man. There was another famous expert named Rudolf Virchow. He was a very powerful scientist in Germany. He looked at the fossils and he dismissed them. He said the skull cap looked like it belonged to a regular human who had a disease. He said the strange shape was caused by a bone deformity. He refused to accept that it was a new species. When a famous man like Rudolf Virchow said this, it made other people doubt Eugene Dubois too. Eugene Dubois felt betrayed. He had spent years in the jungle. He had suffered from malaria. He had done the hard work. And now these men, in their comfortable offices, were telling him he was wrong. He started to become bitter. He started to withdraw from the public. He felt that the world was not ready for his discovery. He stopped going to conferences. He stopped showing the bones to people. He hid the fossils in his house. He kept them in a box. Some stories say he hid them under the floorboards of his dining room. Other stories say he kept them in a safe. He refused to let other scientists see them. When people came to his house to ask about Java Man, he would not let them in. He became a very strange and isolated man. He continued to believe in his discovery, but he did not want to fight anymore. He kept the bones hidden for many years. It would take a long time before the scientific world finally accepted that he was right. The story of Eugene Dubois is a story of determination. It is a story of a man who had a vision and followed it. He was the first person to deliberately go looking for human ancestors. Before him, all fossil discoveries were accidents. People found them while mining or building roads. But Eugene Dubois went to Asia with a specific plan. He looked at the map and he chose a spot and he found what he was looking for. This changed the way paleoanthropology was done. It showed that you could use science to predict where fossils might be. It is also important to remember the context of the time. The late 19th century was a time of colonial expansion. The Dutch controlled Indonesia and took many resources from it. They took spices and rubber and coffee. Eugene Dubois took the fossils. The fossils of Java Man are still in the Netherlands today. They are in a museum in the city of Leiden. Some people think they should be returned to Indonesia. This is a debate that happens with many museum objects. But in the context of our story, it explains why a Dutch man was digging in the banks of the Solo River. The discovery at Trinil was just the beginning. It opened the door to Asia. It made other scientists look at the East. If Eugene Dubois found one ancient human, there might be others. It shifted the focus of the search. For a while, everyone looked to Asia as the cradle of humanity. Later discoveries in Africa would change that view again. But for a long time, Java Man was the star of the show. It was the oldest and most primitive human ever seen. Let us review what Eugene Dubois actually found. He found a molar tooth. He found a skull cap. He found a left femur. Later on, he found another tooth. That is not very much material. It is amazing that we can learn so much from just a few bones. The skull cap tells us about the brain. The brain is the most important organ for humans. It is what makes us smart. It allows us to speak and make tools. The size of the Java man brain shows that they were smarter than apes, but not as smart as us. The shape of the skull shows that they had a different face. They had a flat forehead and a heavy ridge over the eyes. The femur tells us about the body. It tells us how they moved. Walking on two legs is very special. It frees up the hands. If you don't need your hands to walk, you can use them for other things. You can carry food. You can carry babies. You can make tools. You can throw stones. Walking upright is one of the first steps in becoming human. The combination of the small brain and the upright walking was the key. It proved that walking came first. The site at Trinil is still there today. It is a quiet place on the river. There is a small museum there now. You can see where Eugene Dubois set up his camp. You can see the river where the prisoners dug in the mud. It is hard to imagine the excitement of that moment in 1891, the moment when a piece of bone came out of the ground and changed history. It was the first physical proof that we have a long and ancient past. Eugene Dubois eventually died in 1940. He was an old man. By the time he died, many other fossils had been found. Scientists had found Peking Man in China. They had found other fossils in Java. These new discoveries helped to prove that Eugene Dubois was right. They showed that Pithecanthropus erectus was a real creature. It was not a diseased human. It was not a giant gibbon. It was a legitimate ancestor. Today we classify Java man as a species called Homo erectus. This means upright man. It is one of the most successful human species that ever lived. They lived for over 1 million years. They were the first humans to leave Africa and spread across the world. But Eugene Dubois did not know all of that. He only knew what he held in his hand. He knew he had found something wonderful. He dedicated his life to it. Even though he became grumpy and secretive, in his old age he deserves credit. He was a pioneer. He started the hunt for human origins in Asia. In the next part of our lecture, we will look deeper into the analysis of these bones. We will talk more about the arguments and the debates. We will look at how the story of Java man connected with the story of Peking Man. But for now, let us leave Eugene Dubois in his home in the Netherlands with his precious box of bones hidden away. He has done his part. He has found the first piece of the puzzle. And this concludes part 1 of our lecture. I hope you are finding this history interesting and relaxing. The story of science is often a story of people. It is a story of their hopes and their struggles. It is not just about dry facts. It is about the adventure of discovery. In the next part, we will continue this adventure. We will see how the search expanded. We will see how new characters entered the scene. We will travel from the jungles of Indonesia to the hills of China, but all of that is for later. For now, just focus on the slow flow of the river. The Solo River moving quietly through the jungle, the mud settling on the bottom, the bones waiting to be found. Rest your eyes, breathe slowly, let the information settle in your mind. There is no rush. We have plenty of time to learn about the humans of ancient Asia. Part 2. Analysis of the Java man fossils. The story of Java man did not end when Eugene Dubois returned to Europe. In fact, that was only the beginning of the scientific debate. As we mentioned before, the reception of his discovery was mixed. It was a time of great controversy. To understand why people were so upset, we have to look at the details of the bones. We have to look at them like an anatomist would. We have to measure them and compare them. Let us start with the skull cap again. The scientific name for a skull cap is a calvaria. The calvaria of Java man is very distinct. When you look at it from the side, it looks long and low. A modern human skull is high and round like a soccer ball. The Java man's skull is shaped more like a football or a rugby ball. It is stretched out. The widest part of a modern human skull is high up near the ears. The widest part of the Java man's skull is low down near the base, and this gives it a very stable look. The most striking feature is the brow ridge. This is a continuous bar of bone that runs across the eyes. In modern humans, we have a smooth forehead. We might have small bumps over our eyebrows, but nothing like this. The brow ridge of Java man is thick and protruding. It creates a shelf over the eyes. Why did they have this? Scientists think it might have been for structural support. The jaws of these early humans were very large. They had big teeth and strong chewing muscles. When you chew hard things, it puts stress on the skull. The brow ridge might have helped to absorb that stress. The bones of the skull are also very thick. If you tap on your own head, you can feel that the bone is hard, but it is not super thick. The bone of the Java man's skull is almost twice as thick as ours. This made the skull very heavy. It would have required strong neck muscles to hold it up. We can see the marks on the back of the skull where the neck muscles attached. These marks are large and rough. This suggests that Java man had a thick and powerful neck. Now let us look at the brain size again. This is a very important number. We measure brain size in cubic centimeters. This is often abbreviated as cc. The average brain size of a modern human is about 1300 to 1400 cc. The average brain size of a chimpanzee is about 400 cc. The Java man's skull was originally estimated to be about 900 cc. Later measurements with better technology adjusted this slightly, but it remains in that range. This is a very interesting size. It means that the brain of Java man was significantly larger than any ape. It was clearly on the human path, but it was also significantly smaller than a modern human. It was about 2/3 the size of our brain. This raises a question. How smart were they? Brain size is not the only thing that matters for intelligence. The structure of the brain matters too, but size is a good indicator. A 900 cc brain is big enough to do many things. It is big enough to make simple tools. It is big enough to have a complex social life. It is big enough to navigate the environment. However, we must remember that Eugene Dubois did not find any stone tools at Trinil. This was one of the problems with his discovery. Usually when you find human ancestors, you find the things they made. You find hand axes or scrapers or flakes of stone, but at Trinil there were no tools. This made some people doubt that the bones were human. They asked, where is the culture? Where is the evidence of intelligence? Later on, other archaeologists did find tools in Java, but they were found in different places. It seems that at the Trinil site the tools were either not preserved or they were washed away by the river. Now let us turn to the femur, the thigh bone. As we said, it is remarkably modern. It is straight and long. It has a round head that fits into the hip socket. It has two condyles at the bottom that fit into the knee. The angle of the femur is very important. If you put a femur on a table and stand it up, it does not stand straight up and down. It leans in slightly. This is called the valgus angle. This angle brings the knees closer together under the body. This is crucial for walking on two legs. It helps us keep our balance when we stand on one foot. The femur of Java man has this exact angle. It proves that they walked with their knees under their body just like we do. They did not waddle like a chimp. They had a smooth and efficient stride, but there is one strange thing about the femur. It has a growth on it. There is a bony lump on the upper part of the bone. This is a pathological condition. It means it was caused by a disease or an injury. Eugene Dubois noticed this lump. He thought it was just an individual quirk. Modern doctors have looked at this lump. They think it might be a chaotic bone growth caused by an injury to the muscle. It is called myositis ossificans. This happens when a muscle is bruised or torn and bone starts to grow inside the muscle. It would have been painful, but it would not have stopped the person from walking. The fact that the bone healed shows that the individual survived for a long time after the injury. This might suggest that they had help. Maybe other members of the group took care of them, or maybe they were just very tough. The combination of the primitive skull and the modern leg was the center of the debate. Eugene Dubois called it a mosaic. A mosaic is a picture made of different colored tiles. In biology, mosaic evolution means that different parts of the body change at different rates. The legs changed first. They became human-like millions of years ago. The brain changed later. It stayed small for a long time and then got big much later. This was a hard concept for people to grasp in the 1890s. There was also a debate about the age of the fossils. How old were they? Eugene Dubois did not have carbon dating. Carbon dating was not invented yet. And carbon dating only works for things that are less than 50,000 years old anyway. These bones were much older than that. Eugene Dubois had to use relative dating. This means he had to look at the other animals found in the layer. He found fossils of stegodon. A stegodon is an extinct relative of the elephant. It had very long tusks that were close together. He found fossils of extinct cats and hippos. By comparing these animals to other fossil sites, he could guess the age. He thought the site was from the Pliocene or the Pleistocene epoch. These are geological time periods. Today, with modern methods, we know that the trinal fossils are likely between 700,000 and 1 million years old. That is a very long time ago. Let us talk about the teeth again. The first tooth found was a molar. Later, Eugene Dubois found a premolar. The teeth were large. They had big roots. The chewing surface was wrinkled. They did not have the sharp points of a carnivore. They were made for grinding. This tells us about their diet. They probably ate a lot of plant material. They ate roots and tubers and fruits. They might have eaten meat too, but the teeth were not specialized for slicing meat. They were general-purpose teeth. The lack of a chin is another feature. If you feel your own face, you have a chin that sticks out at the bottom. Apes do not have a chin. Their jaw slopes backward. Java man did not have a chin. We do not have the lower jaw of the original Java man, but we have jaws from other Homo erectus found later. They show a receding jawline. The chin is a very modern feature. It only appears in Homo sapiens. So we have a picture of this creature. It stood about 5 feet 6 inches tall, or maybe a bit taller. It was muscular and strong. It walked upright on 2 legs. It had a low, flat head with a heavy brow ridge. It had a face that stuck out a bit. It had no chin. It lived on the banks of the river. It lived among elephants and tigers. It survived in a tropical environment. The criticism from the scientific community took a toll on Eugene Dubois. He was a sensitive man. He felt that people were mocking him. He started to develop strange theories to defend his work. At one point, he even suggested that the femur belonged to a giant gibbon. He backtracked on his own ideas because he was so frustrated with the debate. This confused people even more. Why would the discoverer say it was a gibbon? It was a mess. But other scientists were becoming interested. They wanted to see the bones. Since Eugene Dubois would not show them, they had to go to Java themselves. In the 1930s, another German scientist named Ralph von Koenigswald went to Java. He went to a different site called Sangiran. Sangiran is not far from Trinil. It is also in central Java. Ralph von Koenigswald found more fossils. He found better skulls. He found jaws with teeth. These new discoveries were very important. They looked just like the Trinil skull, but some were more complete. They confirmed that Eugene Dubois was right about the shape of the head. They proved that it was a distinct species. Ralph von Koenigswald sent a letter to Eugene Dubois. He wanted to share the good news, but Eugene Dubois was stubborn. He did not want to admit that these new fossils were the same as his. He claimed that the Sangiran fossils were different. He claimed they were definitely apes, while his Java man was the real ancestor. He was very protective of his find. Despite his stubbornness, the scientific consensus shifted. By the middle of the 20th century, everyone agreed. Java man was a human ancestor. It was placed in the genus Homo. The genus Homo includes us. We are Homo sapiens. Java man became Homo erectus. The name Pithecanthropus was dropped. It is now just a historical name. The analysis of the bones also involves looking at the inside of the skull. Scientists can make a cast of the inside of the skull. This is called an endocast. It shows the shape of the brain. The endocast of Java Man shows some interesting things. It shows that the area of the brain called Broca's area was developed. Broca's area is associated with speech. Does this mean Java Man could talk? It is a big question. The development of this area suggests that they might have had some form of communication. It might not have been complex language like ours. It might have been simple sounds and gestures. But the brain potential was there. The endocast also shows that the brain was asymmetrical. The left side and the right side were slightly different shapes. This is common in humans. It is related to handedness. Being right-handed or left-handed, apes usually have symmetrical brains. The asymmetry in Java Man suggests that they might have been right-handed. And this is another human trait. We have covered a lot of detail about the bones. It can be dry to talk about ridges and angles and cubic centimeters. But these details are the evidence. They are the clues that allow us to reconstruct the past. Without these small details, we would just be guessing. The hard work of anatomy is the foundation of anthropology. I hope this detailed look at the fossils was not too boring. Or maybe I hope it was just boring enough. We have spent a lot of time on the island of Java. We have looked at the work of Eugene Dubois. We have examined the skull and the leg. But Java is only one part of the story. To get the full picture of the humans of ancient Asia, we must travel north. We must go to China. In the next part, we will leave the tropics. We will go to a place that is colder and drier. We will go to the city of Beijing. We will learn about a place called Dragon Bone Hill. We will meet a new set of characters. We will discover a new set of fossils. These fossils are called Peking Man. They are the cousins of Java Man. Their story is just as fascinating and even more dramatic. So lie back and relax. Let the image of the Java Man fade away. Let the tropical heat dissipate. Imagine a cool breeze blowing from the north. Imagine the dust of the Loess Plateau. The story continues. The search continues. The humans of ancient Asia have more secrets to reveal. We will uncover them one by one in the next part. Part 3, The Dragon Bones of China. We are now leaving the tropical heat of Indonesia behind us. We are leaving the damp jungles and the muddy rivers of the island of Java. We are traveling north. We are going to a place with a very different climate and a very different landscape. We are going to China. Specifically, we are going to the northern part of China near the city of Beijing. In the early 20th century, this city was often called Peking. That is why the fossil is called Peking Man. But before we find the man, we must understand the land. The landscape here is dry and dusty. It is dominated by a type of soil called loess. Loess is a fine wind-blown dust. It is yellow and brown. It covers the hills and the valleys. When the wind blows, the air fills with this yellow dust. It coats everything. It coats the trees and the houses and the roads. In the winter, it is very cold here. The wind comes down from Siberia and freezes the ground. In the summer, it is hot and dry. It is a harsh environment compared to the lush tropics of Java, but it is a place with a very deep history. For a very long time, people in China knew about fossils, but they did not call them fossils. They called them dragon bones. In the Chinese language, this is long gu. Long means dragon and gu means bone. The dragon is a very important creature in Chinese mythology. It is a powerful and wise being. It is a symbol of the emperor. People believed that dragons lived in the earth and in the rivers. When they found old bones in the ground, they assumed they belonged to dragons. Farmers would often find these bones when they were ploughing their fields. After the rain, the soil would wash away and reveal the bones. The farmers would collect them. They did not keep them for museums. They sold them. They sold them to apothecaries. An apothecary is a traditional pharmacy. It is a shop where you buy herbal medicine. Traditional Chinese medicine uses many natural ingredients. It uses roots and leaves and bark. It also uses minerals and animal parts. The doctors believed that dragon bones had strong healing powers. They believed that dragons were strong, so their bones would make you strong. They used dragon bones to treat many different sicknesses. They used them for anxiety and for stomach aches. They used them for malaria and for wounds. The way they used them was to grind them up. They would take a fossilized tooth or a piece of bone, they would crush it into a fine powder, then they would mix the powder with water or tea or other herbs. The patient would drink the mixture. This means that for hundreds of years, people were eating fossils. They were eating the evidence of human evolution. We will never know how many important specimens were destroyed this way. It is possible that skulls of ancient humans were ground up into powder and sold in the markets of Beijing. It is a tragedy for science, but it is also just a part of history. People use what they find in their environment. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, Western scientists began to come to China. They were interested in the geology and the animals of the country. They visited the drugstores. They were amazed by what they saw. In the wooden drawers of the apothecaries, they found a treasure trove. They found teeth of extinct horses and rhinos. They found bones of ancient deer. They realized that the dragon bones were actually fossils of mammals that lived millions of years ago. One of the first scientists to notice this was a German man named K.A. Haberer. He was a naturalist. He traveled around China in the year 1899. He bought many dragon bones from the markets. He collected them in crates. He brought them back to Europe to study them. He showed them to other scientists. One of the teeth he found looked very suspicious. It looked like a human tooth, but it was very old. This gave a hint that there might be ancient humans in China too. But the real story of Peking Man begins with a man from Sweden. His name was Johann Gunnar Andersson. He was a geologist. A geologist is someone who studies rocks and the earth. Johann Gunnar Andersson was an adventurous man. He had been to Antarctica. He had explored the polar regions. But in the year 1914, he got a job in China. The Chinese government hired him. They wanted him to help them find minerals. They wanted him to find coal and iron and copper. They wanted to modernize their mining industry. Johann Gunnar Andersson arrived in Beijing in 1914. He worked for the Ministry of Agriculture and Commerce. He spent his days looking for mines. He traveled all over the country. He looked at rocks and mountains. But like Eugene Dubois, he was also interested in fossils. He knew about the dragon bones. He asked his local guides where the bones came from. He wanted to find the source. He did not want to buy them in a shop. He wanted to find them in the ground. In the year 1918, Johann Gunnar Andersson visited a hill near Beijing. The hill was called Chicken Bone Hill. It was near a village called Zhoukudian. Zhoukudian is about 50 kilometers southwest of Beijing. It is at the edge of the western hills. The mountains rise up from the plain. There are many limestone caves in these mountains. Limestone is a soft rock that water can cut through. This makes it perfect for caves. At Chicken Bone Hill, Johann Gunnar Andersson found many small fossils. He found bones of small rodents. He found bones of birds. That is why the locals called it Chicken Bone Hill. They thought the rodent bones looked like chicken bones. Johann Gunnar Andersson was interested, but he wanted to find bigger things. He kept looking in the area. He felt that this place was special. The limestone was full of cracks and fissures. These cracks were filled with red clay. The red clay was full of bones. In the year 1921, another scientist came to visit. His name was Otto Zdansky. He was an Austrian paleontologist. A paleontologist is someone who studies fossils. He came to China to help Johann Gunnar Andersson. They went back to Zhoukudian. They went to a different location near the Chicken Bone Hill. They went to an old limestone quarry. A quarry is a place where people dig out stone to use for building. The local lime burners had been digging there for a long time. The local people told them about this place. They said there were many dragon bones there. Johan Gunnar Andersen and Otto Zdansky looked at the cliff face. They saw the layers of rock. They saw the red clay filling the holes in the limestone. They started to look closely at the rubble on the ground. They found pieces of bone. They found teeth of deer and pigs. Then Johan Gunnar Andersen noticed something else. He saw some pieces of white stone. It was quartz. Quartz is a very hard mineral. It is usually white or clear. The limestone in the hill did not have any quartz in it. The quartz did not belong there. It must have been brought there from somewhere else. Johan Gunnar Andersen picked up the quartz. He saw that the edges were sharp. It looked like it had been broken intentionally. It looked like a tool. He turned to his colleagues. He said something very famous. He said, "Here is primitive man. Now all we have to do is find him." This was a bold prediction. Just like Eugene Dubois, he was guessing. He was guessing that the quartz tools were made by an ancient human. He was guessing that if they dug in that spot, they would find the maker of the tools. Otto Zdansky was the one who had to do the work. Johan Gunnar Andersen was busy with his government job. He could not stay at the site all the time. So he asked Otto Zdansky to lead the excavation. Otto Zdansky was a quiet and careful man. He was not as enthusiastic as Johan Gunnar Andersen. He was skeptical. He did not want to jump to conclusions. He started to dig in the summer of 1921. The work was hard. The rock was hard. They had to use hammers and chisels. They had to break the limestone to get to the clay pockets. They removed a lot of rock. They found many fossils. They found the bones of animals that are now extinct. They found the rhinoceros and the hyena. They found the saber-toothed tiger. The saber-toothed tiger was a terrifying animal with huge teeth. The fact that it lived there meant that the ancient humans had dangerous enemies. Otto Zdansky collected crates full of fossils. He sent them back to Sweden to be cleaned and studied. In the laboratory in Sweden, he went through the material. He cleaned the dirt off the bones. In the collection from 1921, he found something remarkable. He found a single molar tooth. It looked like a human tooth. It was very similar to the tooth that Eugene Dubois had found in Java. But Otto Zdansky was very cautious. He did not tell anyone right away. He wanted to be sure. He put the tooth aside. Later he found another tooth. It was a premolar. Now he had 2 teeth. He knew they were important, but he was a very slow worker. He did not publish his findings until 1926. That is 5 years after he found them. He was afraid of making a mistake. He did not want to be criticized like Eugene Dubois. When he finally announced the discovery, it caused a big stir. The announcement was made in Beijing. There was a scientific meeting. The Crown Prince of Sweden was visiting China. Johan Gunnar Andersen organized the meeting to show the prince the discoveries. He invited scientists from all over the world. At this meeting, they announced that they had found the teeth of a human ancestor at Zhoukoudian. This was the moment that the world started to pay attention to China. Before this, everyone was focused on Europe or maybe Java. But now there was evidence in Beijing. The teeth were very old. They were fossilized. They came from the same layer as the extinct animals. This meant that humans had been in China for a very long time. The scientific community was excited. They wanted to find more. They wanted to find a skull. Teeth are good, but a skull is better. A skull tells you what the creature looked like. It tells you about the brain. Johan Gunnar Andersen knew that he needed more money and more people to continue the work. The excavation was expensive. They needed to hire workers. They needed to buy supplies. They needed to transport the heavy boxes of rocks. This leads us to the involvement of a new organization, the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefeller Foundation is a big American charity. It was started by the Rockefeller family, who made their money in oil. They gave money to science and medicine all over the world. They had built a hospital and a medical school in Beijing called the Peking Union Medical College. This was a very modern institution. It had the best doctors and the best equipment. And there was a man at the Peking Union Medical College named Davidson Black. Davidson Black was a Canadian. He was an anatomist just like Eugene Dubois. He was fascinated by human evolution. He had seen the teeth found by Otto Zdansky. He was convinced that they represented a new species. He was very enthusiastic. He believed that Asia was the birthplace of humanity. He wanted to prove it. Davidson Black went to the Rockefeller Foundation. He asked them for money. He said that they had a chance to make a great discovery. He said that if they funded the excavation at Zhoukoudian, they would find the ancestor of man. The Rockefeller Foundation was interested in biology and human origins. They agreed to give him the money. This was a huge deal. It meant that the dig could continue on a large scale. In 1927, the work began again. This time, it was a major operation. Davidson Black was in charge of the research. A Swedish paleontologist named Birger Bolin was in charge of the field work. Birger Bolin was a tough man. The political situation in China was getting dangerous. There was a civil war going on. There were bandits in the hills. Soldiers were marching back and forth. It was not a safe place to be. But Birger Bolin went to Zhoukoudian anyway. He rode a mule to the site. He lived in a small temple nearby. He supervised the workers. They dug for months. They found tons of animal bones, but they did not find any human bones. Davidson Black was getting anxious. He had promised the Rockefeller Foundation that they would find something. If they didn't find anything, the money would stop. Finally, in October of 1927, they found it. Birger Bolin found another tooth. It was a beautiful lower molar. It was perfect. He wrapped it up carefully. He put it in his pocket. He rode his mule back to Beijing. He marched into Davidson Black's office and put the tooth on the desk. Davidson Black was overjoyed. He looked at the tooth. He compared it to the other teeth. He decided that it was enough evidence to name a new species. He did not wait for a skull. He was bold. He named the new species Sinanthropus pekinensis. This translates to Chinese man of Peking. This is the formal name for Peking Man. Later, it would be reclassified as Homo erectus, just like Java Man. But at the time, they thought it was a new genus. The name Sinanthropus became famous. The discovery of the tooth secured the funding. The Rockefeller Foundation was happy. They gave more money. The excavation continued for many years. It became one of the biggest fossil digs in history. They removed thousands of cubic meters of rock. They used dynamite to blast the hard limestone. They built a small railway to move the dirt. They had a team of over 100 workers. Let us describe the site of Zhoukoudian in more detail. It was not just a hole in the ground, it was a cave system. But over time, the roof of the cave had collapsed. It had filled up with dirt and rocks and bones. The miners had dug away part of the hill, so the cross-section of the cave was exposed. You could see the layers of history like a layer cake. There were layers of ash. There were layers of red clay. There were layers of limestone blocks that had fallen from the roof. Each layer represented a different time period. The deeper you went, the older it was. The scientists worked from the top down. They carefully mapped every bone they found. They used a grid system. They divided the site into squares. Every time they found something, they wrote down exactly which square it came from. This allowed them to reconstruct the cave later. They could tell where the animals lived and where the humans lived. The work was slow and tedious. The dust was everywhere. In the summer, the sun beat down on the rocks. The limestone reflected the heat. It was like an oven. In the winter, the wind was freezing. The workers wore padded cotton clothes to stay warm. They sifted through the dirt with their hands. They looked for the smallest fragments. They were looking for teeth. They were looking for bones. They were looking for stone tools. The year 1928 was a good year. They found jaws, they found pieces of skulls, they found more teeth. It was becoming clear that this was a major habitation site. This was not just a place where a few bones had washed in. This was a place where people had lived. They lived there for a very long time, thousands of years. Generations of early humans had used this cave as a shelter, but the biggest prize was still missing. They wanted a complete skull. They wanted to see the face of Peking Man. They had pieces, but they did not have the whole thing. The public was waiting. The newspapers were writing stories about the missing link. Davidson Black worked tirelessly in his laboratory. He made casts of the fossils. He traveled to Europe and America to show them to other scientists. He was the promoter of Peking Man. Sadly, Davidson Black had a weak heart. He worked too hard. He stayed up late at night, studying the bones. He smoked too many cigarettes. He was under a lot of pressure, but he kept pushing. He believed that the skull would be found soon. He created a research laboratory in Beijing called the Cenozoic Research Laboratory. Cenozoic is the geological era that we live in. It is the era of mammals. This laboratory became the center for the study of human evolution in Asia. While Davidson Black was in the lab, the work at the site was led by a Chinese paleontologist. His name was Pei Wenzhong. Pei Wenzhong is a very important figure in this story. He was the one who actually found the first skull. We will talk more about him in the next part. But it is important to recognize that while the Western scientists often got the credit, the Chinese scientists did a lot of the work. They were the ones in the trenches. They were the ones managing the workers. They were the ones making the daily discoveries. The cooperation between the Chinese and the Western scientists was unique. It was a partnership. The fossils belonged to China. The agreement was that the fossils would stay in China. They would not be taken to museums in Europe or America. This was very different from what happened with Java Man. Eugene Dubois took the Java Man fossils to the Netherlands and they stayed there. But the Peking Man fossils were to remain in Beijing. This was a point of national pride for the Chinese scholars. Let us pause and think about what we have covered in this part. We have moved from the apothecaries selling dragon bones to a scientific excavation. We have seen how a few teeth found in a drugstore led to a massive digging project. We have met Johan Gunnar Andersen, the geologist who followed the clues. We have met Davidson Black, the anatomist who secured the funding. We have described the dusty hills of Zhoukoudian. The search for fossils is a game of patience. It involves moving a lot of dirt to find a tiny object. It involves luck. If Johan Gunnar Andersen had not picked up that piece of quartz, he might never have found the site. If Otto Zdansky had not been so careful with the teeth, they might have been lost. Every step of the way there was a chance for failure, but luck was on their side. The context of the dragon bones is fascinating. It reminds us that people always have explanations for the things they find in nature. The Chinese farmers did not know about evolution, but they knew the bones were special. They knew they were powerful. Science is just a new way of explaining the same things. Instead of dragons, we see ancestors. Instead of magic medicine, we see biological history, but the sense of wonder is the same. Holding a tooth that is 500,000 years old is a magical experience. As we end this part, let us visualize the scene at Zhoukoudian in the 1920s. Imagine the sound of the picks hitting the rock. Clink, clink, clink. Imagine the dust rising in the air. Imagine the donkeys carrying the supplies up the hill. Imagine the scientists sitting in their tent looking at a map. They are looking for a needle in a haystack, but they know the needle is there. They just have to keep digging. The sun sets behind the western hills. The sky turns purple and red. The work stops for the day. The workers go back to their village. The scientists write in their journals. They are tired, but they are hopeful. Tomorrow might be the day. Tomorrow they might find the skull. The story of Peking Man is building up. The stage is set for the greatest discovery of them all. We have laid the groundwork. We have introduced the players. We have opened the cave. In the next part, we will go deep into that cave. We will be there when the candlelight shines on the first skull of Peking Man. We will witness the moment that made headlines around the world. But for now, let the dust settle. Let the dragon bones rest in the clay. The history is safe in the ground. It has waited for hundreds of thousands of years. It can wait for a few more minutes. Part 4. The Discovery of the Skulls. We are now ready to enter the most exciting phase of the excavation at Zhoukoudian. The year is 1929. The location is the same dusty hill outside of Beijing. The team has been digging for 2 years now. They have found teeth and jaws and pieces of bone. But they still lack the most important thing. They lack a complete skull. A skull is the holy grail of paleoanthropology. It is the face of the ancestor. The man in charge of the excavation at the site is now Pei Wenzhong. He is a young Chinese paleontologist. He graduated from Peking University. He is smart and dedicated. He took over the field supervision from Birger Bolin. It is winter. The weather in December in Beijing is very cold. The temperature drops below freezing. The wind is biting. Most people would stop digging in the winter. But Pei Wenzhong is determined. He wants to finish the season strong. The workers are digging in a deep pit. The pit is about 40 meters deep. It is dark and narrow. They have to use ropes to climb down. They have to use candles to see. It is dangerous work. The walls of the pit could collapse, but they keep going. They are following a layer of hard sediment. They believe this layer contains more fossils. On the afternoon of December 2nd, 1929, the sun is already setting. It gets dark early in the winter. The workers are tired. They want to go home. But Pei Wenzhong sees something. He is working at the bottom of the pit. He is using a small hammer and a chisel. He is chipping away at the rock. He sees a curved piece of bone sticking out of the sediment. It looks round. It looks like the top of a head. He carefully brushes away the dirt. The bone continues. It is not just a fragment. It is a large piece. He realizes he has found it. He has found the skull cap. It is embedded in hard rock. He cannot just pull it out. If he pulls it, it might break. The bone is fragile. It has been there for 500,000 years. He has to be extremely gentle. He yells to his workers. He tells them to stop what they are doing. He tells them to bring more candles. It is getting darker and darker. The only light comes from the flickering candles. In the dim light, Pei Wenzhong works. He works for hours. He slowly removes the rock around the skull. He isolates the block of earth containing the skull. He does not try to take the bone out of the rock yet. He decides to take the whole block of rock out. It is freezing cold. His hands are numb. But he does not stop. He wraps the block in paper and cloth. He uses flour paste to harden the wrapping. This is a technique used by paleontologists to protect fossils. He creates a hard shell around the block. Finally, he is ready to lift it out. The workers help him. They hoist the heavy block up the ropes. They bring it to the surface. Pei Wenzhong knows he has something special. He does not trust the regular transport. He decides to carry it himself. He wraps the block in his own bedding. He puts it on his bicycle. No, the roads are too bad. He takes a rickshaw part of the way. He takes the train. He guards the package with his life. He brings it back to the laboratory in Beijing. At the laboratory, Davidson Black is waiting. He has heard the news. When Pei Wenzhong arrives, they open the package. They carefully begin to clean the skull. It takes a long time. They use fine needles and brushes. Grain by grain, they remove the rock. Slowly, the face of Peking Man is revealed. It is a magnificent specimen. It is much more complete than the Java man's skull. It has the whole top of the head. It has the brow ridges. It has the forehead. It has the back of the skull. It allows scientists to see the shape of the head perfectly. It confirms everything that Eugene Dubois had said about Java Man. The features are almost identical. The low forehead, the thick brow ridge, the thick bone. But the Peking Man skull is slightly larger. The brain size is bigger. It is about 1,000 cubic centimeters. And this suggests that Peking Man might be slightly more advanced than Java Man. Or maybe it is just variation within the species. Just like modern humans vary in size, these ancient humans varied too. The discovery of the first skull in 1929 made headlines all over the world. It was front-page news. The New York Times wrote about it. The London Times wrote about it. Everyone was talking about Peking Man. It was the proof that everyone had been waiting for. It proved that the creature found in Java was not a freak. It was a real species that lived across a huge area of Asia. This discovery gave new energy to the excavation. Now they knew exactly where to look. In the following years, they found more skulls. In 1936, they found 3 more skulls. These were found by another Chinese paleontologist named Jialampo. Jialampo was a trainee under Pei Wenzhong. He became an expert excavator. Imagine the feeling of finding not just one, but multiple skulls. It allowed the scientists to study the population. They found skulls of adults. They found skulls of children. They found skulls of old people. They could see how the skull changed as the person grew up. They could see the differences between males and females. The males had larger brow ridges and thicker bones. The females were slightly smaller. By the time the excavation stopped in 1937, they had found a huge collection. They had parts of more than 40 individuals. They had 5 complete skull caps. They had many jaws, they had many teeth, they had pieces of arm bones and leg bones. It was the best collection of early human fossils ever found in the world at that time. But there was something missing. They found many skulls, but very few limb bones. They found very few arm bones or leg bones or ribs. This was a mystery. Usually when an animal dies, you find the whole skeleton, or at least you find a mix of bones. But here they found mostly heads. Why just heads? Some scientists proposed a dark theory. They suggested that Peking Man was a cannibal. They thought that maybe they were headhunters. Maybe they cut off the heads of their enemies and brought them to the cave. Maybe they ate the brains. This theory was popular for a long time. It made Peking Man seem savage and violent. However, modern scientists have a different explanation. They think it was the work of hyenas. Hyenas are scavengers. They eat bones. But human skulls are very hard and round. They are difficult for a hyena to crack open. So the hyenas might have eaten the rest of the body but left the skulls behind. The skulls rolled into the cave or were washed in by water. This explanation is less dramatic but probably more accurate. Let us return to Davidson Black. He was the one studying these skulls. He was writing a massive book about them. He described every bump and every groove. He named every feature. His work was meticulous. He showed that the brain of Peking Man was fundamentally human. Even though it was small, the shape was human. The areas for memory and thinking were developed. Tragically, Davidson Black died in 1934. He died at his desk in the laboratory. He was holding his pen. He was working on the description of the skulls. He gave his life for science. He was only 49 years old. He is a hero of paleoanthropology. After Davidson Black died, a new man took over. His name was Franz Weidenreich. He was a German anatomist. He was a Jewish refugee fleeing from the Nazis. He came to China to be safe. He was a brilliant scientist. He took up the work of Davidson Black. He studied the fossils with even more detail. He made excellent casts of all the bones. These casts are very important because, as we will see later, the original bones were lost. If Franz Weidenreich had not made those casts, we would have nothing left. Franz Weidenreich was the one who realized that Peking Man and Java Man were the same species. He saw that the differences were very small. He proposed that they should be grouped together. Later, they were both put into the species Homo erectus. This unified the story of human evolution in Asia. It showed that there was one main type of human ancestor living in the East for 1 million years. The excavation at Zhoukoudian was a monumental effort. It involved hundreds of people. It involved international cooperation. It involved the Rockefeller Foundation. It involved the Chinese Geological Survey. It was a golden age of discovery. The volume of earth moved was staggering. They essentially hollowed out the hill. They turned the hill inside out to find the secrets within. The conditions in the cave were preserved perfectly. Because the roof had collapsed, the cave was sealed. It was like a time capsule. It protected the bones from the weather. It protected them from erosion. This is why the fossils were in such good condition. They were not rolled in a river like the Java Man fossils. They were sitting exactly where they had been left. The sheer number of fossils is hard to comprehend. Thousands of animal fossils. Deer, buffalo, horses, camels, ostriches. Yes, ostriches lived in China back then. Giant hyenas. Saber-toothed cats. This gives us a picture of the environment. It was a rich ecosystem. It was a savanna with open grasslands and some forests. It was a good place for hunters to live. There was plenty of meat available. The discovery of the Peking Man skulls changed the way we look at ourselves. Before this, people thought that humans evolved in Europe. They thought the Piltdown Man was the answer. Piltdown Man was a fossil found in England. It had a big brain and an ape jaw. It turned out to be a fake. It was a hoax, but for a long time it confused everyone. Peking Man proved that the brain got big later. Peking Man showed that the primitive features lasted for a long time. It corrected the path of science. Let us picture the skulls again. They are dark brown. They are shiny. They look like polished stone. They are heavy. If you held one, you would be surprised by the weight. They are the only physical connection we have to these ancient people. We can look into their empty eye sockets and wonder what they saw. We can look at their teeth and wonder what they ate. We can touch their brow ridges and feel the strength of their bone. The story of their discovery is a story of hard work and sharp eyes. It is the story of Pei Wenzhong shivering in the cold December night holding a candle. It is the story of the workers hauling rocks day after day. It is the story of the quiet patience required to uncover the past. In the next part, we will look at how these people lived. We have their skulls, but what about their lives? Did they have fire? Did they have tools? Did they speak? We will explore the daily life of Peking Man. We will look at the ashes and the stones. We will try to reconstruct their culture. But for now, let us leave the skulls safe in the laboratory. Let us leave them in the hands of Franz Weidenreich. They are safe for now, or at least they seem to be. This concludes part 4. We have found the skulls. We have met the ancestors. The backbone of our story is strong. The evidence is solid. The humans of ancient Asia are no longer a myth. They are a reality. Rest your mind on this fact. We have found them. We know who they were, and now we can sleep. Part 5. The daily life of Peking Man. We have spent a lot of time talking about the bones of Peking Man. We have talked about his skull and his teeth and his jaw. We have talked about how he was found and who found him. But a person is more than just a collection of bones. A person has a life. A person wakes up in the morning and does things. A person eats and sleeps and works. In this part of the lecture, we will try to reconstruct the daily life of the people who lived in the cave at Zhoukoudian. We will look at the objects they left behind. We will look at the trash they threw on the floor. Archaeologists love trash. Trash tells you the truth about how people lived. When we imagine the life of Peking Man, we must remember the environment. As we said before, the climate was not always the same. It changed over hundreds of thousands of years. Sometimes it was warm and wet, sometimes it was cold and dry. But generally it was a temperate climate. It had seasons. There was a winter and a summer. This means that survival required planning. You could not just sleep under a tree all year round like in the tropics. You needed shelter. The cave at Zhoukoudian was a perfect shelter. It was large. It faced the sun. It protected the people from the wind and the rain. But what did they do inside the cave? One of the most obvious things they did was make tools. We have found thousands of stone tools in the cave. In fact, we have found more than 100,000 stone artifacts. This includes finished tools and the waste flakes from making them. The stone tools of Peking Man are very interesting. They are not beautiful. If you look at the hand axes from Africa or Europe from the same time, they are often very symmetrical. They look like teardrops. They are carefully shaped. But the tools of Peking Man are different. They look rough. They look casual. At first glance, you might think they are just broken rocks, but when you look closer, you see the marks of design. The main material they used was quartz. Quartz is a crystal. It is very hard. It is also very brittle. When you hit quartz, it shatters. It does not break in a predictable way like flint or obsidian. It is a very difficult material to work with. If you hit it the wrong way, it just turns into dust or useless chunks. But quartz was available. There were veins of quartz in the mountains nearby. The people of the cave went out and collected blocks of quartz. They brought them back to the cave to work on them. Because quartz is so hard to handle, they used a specific technique. It is called the bipolar technique. And this is a fancy name for a simple method. You take a piece of quartz and you place it on a large flat rock. This flat rock is your anvil. Then you take a hammerstone in your hand, you smash the quartz from the top. The force goes through the quartz and hits the anvil and bounces back. This crushes the quartz from both ends. That is why it is called bipolar, two poles, top and bottom. This method produces a lot of splinters. It produces small, sharp flakes. These flakes are the tools. They are not big axes, they are small, sharp edges. The people used these flakes for cutting. They used them to cut meat. They used them to scrape wood. They used them to work on hides. It was a simple industry, but it worked. They did not need fancy tools to survive. They just needed a sharp edge. They also used other rocks. They used sandstone. They used flint when they could find it. They made choppers. A chopper is a round stone with a sharp edge on one side. You hold the round part in your palm and you chop with the sharp edge. It is good for breaking bones. It is good for chopping branches. And these tools show us that Peking Man had culture. They taught their children how to make tools. They had a tradition. This tradition lasted for hundreds of thousands of years without changing very much. They were conservative. They found a way that worked and they stuck to it. Now we come to the most controversial and famous aspect of Peking Man. Fire. Did they have fire? For a long time the answer was a definite yes. The excavators found thick layers of black substance in the cave. In some places the black layer was 6 meters deep. That is 20 feet of ash. They interpreted this as the remains of huge hearths. They thought that Peking Man kept a fire burning all the time. They thought he did not know how to make fire, so he had to keep a natural fire alive. If the fire went out, he would have to wait for a lightning strike to start a new one. So they fed the fire day and night. This created the massive piles of ash. The evidence seemed strong. They found charred bones in the black layers. They found stones that looked like they had been cracked by heat. They found seeds that looked burnt. The ability to control fire is a huge step. in human evolution. Fire provides warmth. This allows people to live in colder places. Beijing is cold in the winter. Without fire, it would be very miserable in that cave. Fire provides protection. Wild animals are afraid of fire. If you have a fire at the mouth of the cave, the tigers and hyenas will stay away. You can sleep safely. Fire also allows you to cook. Cooking is very important. Raw meat is hard to chew. It takes a lot of energy to digest. Raw plants can be tough or even poisonous. Cooking breaks down the food. It makes it softer. It makes it easier to digest. It kills bacteria and parasites. If you cook your food, you get more energy from it. This extra energy can go to your brain. Some scientists think that cooking is what allowed our brains to get so big. So the image of Peking Man sitting around a fire was the standard picture in textbooks for decades. We imagined them roasting meat. We imagined them telling stories. We imagined the cave glowing with orange light in the night. It was a cozy and human scene. But in recent years, science has taken a closer look. New studies have challenged the fire theory. Scientists analyzed the chemical composition of the black layers. They found that the black stuff was not always wood ash. Some of it was fine silt and organic matter that had washed into the cave. It was microscopic layers of mud. Other parts were indeed ash, but they might have been from natural fires. Maybe bat guano caught fire. Bat guano is the poop of bats. It builds up in caves. It can burn if it gets dry, and something ignites it. However, there are still bones that are clearly burned. There are stones that are crazed by heat. Most experts still believe that Peking Man used fire. Maybe they did not have a bonfire burning for thousands of years continuously. Maybe the 6-meter layer is a mix of water deposits and ash. But the presence of fire seems real. Even if it was just small fires for cooking, it changes the way we see them. It makes them much more human. Let us talk about the food. What did they eat? We know they ate meat. The cave is full of animal bones. We call this the kitchen refuse. But they also ate plants. It is harder to find evidence of plants because they rot away. They do not fossilize like bones. But we found seeds. Specifically, we found the seeds of the hackberry. The hackberry is a small fruit. It has a hard shell. The people ate the berries and spit out the seeds. Or maybe they ate the seeds too. The presence of thousands of hackberry seeds suggests they were gathering fruit from the forest. They probably ate other things too. They probably ate roots and tubers. They probably ate nuts. They probably ate insects. Early humans were not picky eaters. They ate whatever they could find. They were opportunists. But the meat was the main event. The list of animals found in the cave is impressive. It reads like a zoo of the Pleistocene era. The most common animal was the deer. There were 2 types of deer. The sika deer, which is a regular-sized deer, and the giant deer. The scientific name for the giant deer is Megalocheiros pachyosteus. This was a magnificent beast. It had antlers that were flat and wide. The antlers could span several meters. The bones of this deer are very common in the cave. This leads to a big debate. Were the people hunting these deer, or were they scavenging them? For a long time we thought Peking Man was a mighty hunter. We thought he organized hunting parties. We thought he used spears and traps. We thought he chased the deer over cliffs. This fits with our idea of brave ancestors. But then came the skeptics. In the 1980s, an archaeologist named Louis Binford looked at the bones again. He was very critical. He said there is no evidence of hunting. He looked at the marks on the bones. He saw the marks of stone tools, but he also saw the marks of teeth. The teeth of carnivores, specifically the teeth of the giant hyena. The giant hyena was a terrifying animal. Its scientific name is Pachycracuta brevirostris. It was much bigger than the hyenas in Africa today. It was the size of a lion. It had jaws that could crush the leg bone of an elephant. It was a bone eater. It lived in caves. In fact, it might have lived in the same cave as Peking Man. Louis Binford suggested that the hyenas were the ones who brought the bones into the cave. He thought the hyenas were the hunters. They killed the deer and dragged them into their den. Then the humans came in later. Maybe the humans sneaked in when the hyenas were sleeping or away. The humans stole the bones. They scavenged the leftovers. They used their stone tools to smash the bones open. They wanted the marrow. Marrow is the soft fat inside the bone. It is very nutritious. It is full of calories. If you cannot kill an animal, you can still get a good meal from its bones. Even if the meat is gone, the marrow stays fresh for a while inside the hard bone. Louis Binford painted a picture of Peking Man as a scavenger, a bottom feeder. He argued that they were not the masters of the cave. They were just visitors who competed with the hyenas. This debate went back and forth. Today, most scientists think the truth is somewhere in the middle. Peking Man was probably both a hunter and a scavenger. They probably could kill smaller animals. They probably chased sick or young animals, but they also took advantage of dead animals they found. They were flexible. They did what they had to do to survive. There is evidence that humans were the primary accumulation agent for some of the bones. The pattern of the cut marks shows that they were stripping meat off the bones. This suggests they had access to the meaty parts, not just the dry bones. So they were getting to the animal early. This supports the hunting theory. Also, the sheer number of stone tools suggests a long-term occupation. You do not leave 100,000 tools if you are just sneaking in for 5 minutes. The cave was a home base. It was a place where they returned again and again. It was a safe haven. Let us imagine the cave again. It was messy. It smelled. It smelled of rotting meat and unwashed bodies. It smelled of smoke. The floor was covered in debris. There were stone chips everywhere. If you walked barefoot, you would cut your feet. There were broken bones scattered around. There were piles of ash. It was not a clean place, but it was a social place. The people lived in groups. We do not know how big the groups were, maybe 20 or 30 people. They relied on each other. They shared food. If one person killed a deer, they probably shared it with the others. This sharing is a very human trait. It binds the group together. They probably had a division of labor. Maybe the strong males went out to hunt. Maybe the females and children stayed near the cave to gather plants and wood. We can only guess about this. Bones do not tell us about gender roles, but we know they took care of each other. We know this because we found bones of individuals who had injuries. They had broken bones that had healed. You cannot survive a broken leg in the wild alone. Someone has to bring you water. Someone has to bring you food. The fact that they survived proves that there was compassion, there was care. The daily routine would start with the sun. When the sun came up, the cave would light up. The people would wake up. They would be hungry. They would look for leftovers from the night before. They would check the fire. If it was low, they would add wood. Then they would plan the day. They would look at the weather. If it was raining, they might stay inside and make tools. If it was sunny, they would go out. They would walk down the hill to the river. There was a river nearby. They needed water. They would drink from the river. They would look for stones in the riverbed. The river brings stones from the mountains. This is where they found the quartz and sandstone. They would select the best stones and carry them back up the hill. They would forage in the forest. They would look for hackberries. They would look for birds' eggs. They would listen for animals. They had to be very alert. The landscape was dangerous. The saber-toothed tiger was out there. The tiger had 2 long teeth like knives sticking out of its mouth. It was an ambush predator. It would hide in the bushes and jump out. Peking Man had to be careful. He was not the top of the food chain yet. He was in the middle. Communication was key. Did they speak? We mentioned the brain casts earlier. The broker's area suggests they could speak, but their language was probably not like ours. It was probably very simple. They did not have complex grammar. They probably had words for tiger and fire and meat. They probably used a lot of gestures. They used their hands to point and describe. When they returned to the cave in the evening, they would bring their catch. If they had meat, they would process it. They would use the sharp quartz flakes to cut the skin. They would slice the meat. If they had fire, they would roast it. The smell of cooking meat would fill the cave. This would make everyone hungry. They would eat together. After eating, they would break the bones. They would put the bone on an anvil and smash it with a hammer stone. Crack. The bone splits open. They would suck out the marrow. It was rich and fatty. It gave them the energy to stay warm. They would throw the broken bone fragments on the floor. Over thousands of years, these fragments built up the layers of the cave floor. Then they would sleep. They would huddle together for warmth. The nights were long and dark. The fire would flicker. Outside, the hyenas would laugh. The wolves would howl. But inside the cave, they were safe. This was their world. It was a small world, but it was theirs. We must also mention the other animals in the cave. There were not just deer and hyenas. There were monkeys, macaques. There were rhinoceroses. There were elephants. There were ostriches. There were porcupines. We know about the porcupines because they gnaw on bones. We found bones with porcupine teeth marks. It seems everyone wanted to be in that cave. It was prime real estate. Sometimes the humans were not there. Maybe they migrated. Maybe they went to the south for the winter. When the humans left, the animals moved in. The hyenas took over. The bears took over. Cave bears also lived there. Then when the humans came back, they had to kick the animals out. It was a constant struggle for possession of the shelter. The timeline of the cave is very long. The site was occupied on and off for nearly 500,000 years. That is 500,000 years. Think about how long that is. Civilization has only existed for maybe 5,000 years. These people lived the same way in the same place for 500,000 years. They saw the climate change. They saw the animals change. But they kept doing the same things. They kept smashing quartz. They kept eating deer. This stability is amazing. It shows that their adaptation was successful. It was sustainable. They did not destroy their environment. They lived within it. There is one more mystery about the daily life. Cannibalism. We mentioned it briefly in the last part regarding the skulls, but did they eat each other? Some skulls show marks that look like cutting. Some bones are broken in a way that suggests marrow extraction. For a long time, scientists were sure that Peking Man was a cannibal. They thought he ate the brains of his enemies to get their power, or maybe just for food. Modern science is less sure. The marks might be from falling rocks, they might be from animal trampling, but we cannot rule it out. Cannibalism has happened in human history. It happens in nature. If food was scarce and someone died, it might have been a pragmatic choice. We should not judge them by our moral standards. They were trying to survive in a harsh world, but there is no definitive proof that they hunted each other for food. The tools tell us something else. They tell us about their hands. To make a stone tool, you need a good grip. You need a precision grip. You need to hold the stone between your thumb and fingers. You need hand-eye coordination. You need to hit the stone at exactly the right angle. If you hit it wrong, it breaks. This requires a connection between the brain and the hand. The fact that they made so many tools shows that their brains were wired for complex tasks. We also find tools made of bone and antler. These are rare, but they exist. They used deer antlers as hammers. They used broken bones as diggers. They were resourceful. They used every material available to them. As we think about their daily life, we should try to see the humanity in it. It is easy to think of them as monsters or apes. But they were people. They had families. They had fears. They felt hunger. They looked at the stars. They watched the river flow. They were the pioneers of Asia. They survived in a land that was wild and untamed. They walked on the same ground that is now the sprawling city of Beijing. Today, Beijing is a city of millions of people. It has skyscrapers and cars and pollution, but beneath the concrete lies the dust of the Loess. And in that dust are the memories of Peking Man, the first Beijinger. The excavation of the site gave us this picture. It took years of digging and sifting. Every small seed and every small flake added a pixel to the image. We are lucky that the cave preserved so much. Most open-air sites disappear. The wind blows the evidence away, but the cave kept it safe. It acted as a trap for history. So when you think of Peking Man, do not just think of a skull on a shelf. Think of a man sitting on a rock. Think of him holding a piece of quartz. Think of the spark as he hits the stone. Think of the smoke rising from the fire. Think of the smell of roasted venison. Think of the sound of children playing in the dirt. This was their life. It was a hard life, but it was a life. In the next part of our lecture, we will look closer at the physical body of these people. We have talked about their tools and their food. Now we will talk about their anatomy in detail. We will compare them to us. We will see exactly how they were built. We will understand the machinery of their bodies. But for now, let the fire die down. Let the cave go dark. The day is over at Zhoukoudian. This concludes part 5. We have explored the kitchen and the workshop of our ancestors. We have seen how they survived the challenges of the Pleistocene. It is a story of resilience, a story of sticking to what works, a story of quartz and bone and ash. Rest now. Let these simple images fill your mind. There is no need to worry about the details. Just let the feeling of the ancient caves surround you. The safety of the shelter, the warmth of the fire, the quiet of the night. Part 6. Physical Anthropology of Homo erectus. Now we turn our attention to the physical body of the humans of ancient Asia. We have looked at their homes and their tools. Now we must look at them. We must look at them with the eyes of an anatomist. We must understand how they were built. We have already mentioned some features of the skull, but now we will go into much more detail. We will look at the whole skeleton. We will look at the muscles and the height and the weight. We will compare Peking Man and Java Man. We will see why they are grouped together as Homo erectus. Let us start with the skull again, because it is the most important part. The skull of Peking Man is low and thick. We call this platycephalic. Platy means flat and cephalic means head. The forehead is not vertical like yours. It slopes backward. It is almost flat. This means the frontal lobes of the brain were smaller than yours. The frontal lobes are the part of the brain behind your forehead. They are used for planning and complex thinking. The fact that they were smaller does not mean they couldn't think. It just means they thought differently. The brow ridge is the most famous feature. It is called the supraorbital torus. Supra means above. Orbital means eye. Torus means a bump or a ridge. This ridge is a solid bar of bone. It is not hollow. In modern humans, we have a frontal sinus inside our brow. It is an air pocket, but in Homo erectus, the bone is solid. This makes the face look very heavy. The eyes are set deep under this ridge. It would have given them a very intense stare. The skull is widest at the bottom. If you look at a modern human from the back, the skull is widest at the top. It looks like a house with a roof. But if you look at Peking Man from the back, the skull is widest at the base. It looks like a bell. This is because the brain case is smaller and the base of the skull is very wide to support the neck muscles. On the top of the skull there is often a slight ridge. It is called a sagittal keel. It is not a sharp crest like a gorilla has. It is a gentle bump that runs down the middle of the head. Looks like the keel of a boat. This adds strength to the skull. The bone itself is incredibly thick. The vault of the skull can be up to 10 millimeters thick. That is 1 centimeter. Your skull is much thinner. This thickness protected the brain from accidents and blows. The face of Peking Man projected forward. We call this prognathism. The jaws stick out, but not as much as an ape. It is halfway between an ape and a human. The nose was wide and flat. The nasal bones are broad. This suggests a wide nose that would help warm the cold air before it entered the lungs. This is an adaptation to the cold climate of northern China. Now let us look at the teeth and jaws. The mandible or lower jaw is very robust. It is thick and heavy. As we said before, there is no chin. The front of the jaw slopes back. The teeth are arranged in a parabolic arch. This means the shape of the jaw is like a parabola. Apes have a U-shaped jaw. The sides are parallel. Humans have a parabolic jaw. The sides flare out. Peking Man has a parabolic jaw, just like us. This is a very human trait. The teeth themselves are large. The molars have large pulp cavities. This is called taurodontism. It means bull teeth. The roots are not separated. They are fused together. The enamel is thick. The incisors or front teeth are often shovel-shaped. If you feel the back of your front teeth, they might be smooth. But in many Asian populations today, the back of the front teeth has a scooped-out shape. It feels like a shovel. This trait is found in Peking Man. It is also found in modern Native Americans and East Asians. This was once used to argue that Peking Man was the direct ancestor of modern Chinese people. We will talk about that later. Let us move down to the rest of the body. For a long time, we only had skulls. But eventually researchers found limb bones. They found femurs and humerus bones and collarbones. The limb bones tell us how tall they were. Based on the length of the femur, scientists estimate that Peking Man stood about 156 centimeters tall on average. That is about 5 feet 1 inch. Some males might have been taller, maybe 5 feet 5. They were not giants. They were shorter than the average modern human, but they were very strong. The bones are thick. The walls of the long bones are very dense. The marrow cavity is narrow. This means the bones were built to withstand high stress. They had very strong muscles attached to these bones. We can see the muscle attachment sites. They are rough and large. Peking Man was a muscular creature. He was physically active. He walked long distances. He carried heavy loads. He fought with animals. He was an athlete of survival. The proportions of the body were similar to ours. The legs were long compared to the arms. Apes have long arms and short legs. Humans have long legs and short arms. This is for efficient walking. Peking Man had human proportions. This confirms that they were fully terrestrial. They lived on the ground. They did not live in trees. They might have climbed trees to get fruit or honey, but they did not live there. Now let us compare Peking Man to Java Man. Remember, Java Man was found in Indonesia. Peking Man was found in China. Are they the same? Yes, they are very similar. They both have the heavy brow ridge. They both have the low skull. They both have the thick bones. They both have the same teeth. But there are differences. Java Man is slightly more primitive. The brain size of Java Man averages around 900 cubic centimeters. The brain size of Peking Man averages around 1,040 cubic centimeters. So Peking Man had a bigger brain. This makes sense because Peking Man is younger. Java Man lived maybe 1 million years ago. Peking Man lived maybe 500,000 years ago. In that time, the brain grew a little bit. Also, the skull of Java Man is slightly more robust. The brow ridge is straighter. In Peking Man, the brow ridge is slightly arched. These are small details. To a non-expert, they would look almost identical. That is why they are both placed in the species Homo erectus. Homo erectus was a very stable species. It existed for over 1.5 million years. It spread from Africa to Europe to Asia. It was the first human species to cover the globe. There is another variation of Homo erectus found in Java. It is called the Solo Man. It was found near the Solo River in the 1930s. It is younger than the original Java Man. It has an even bigger brain. It shows that the humans in Java were also evolving. They were getting smarter too. What about the soft tissue? We do not have any skin or hair or eyes. These things rot away. So we have to guess. We guess that they had dark skin. In the tropics, dark skin protects you from the sun. In the north, maybe they had lighter skin to absorb vitamin D, but we do not know for sure. They probably had body hair, but probably not a full coat of fur like an ape. They likely had sweat glands. Sweating is a human way to cool down. It allows us to run for a long time without overheating. We can assume their eyes were dark. Their hair was probably black and straight. These are common traits in humans. We can try to reconstruct their faces. Artists use the skull to build up the muscles and skin. When you see a reconstruction of Peking Man in a museum, it usually looks like a rough human. He looks stern, he looks tough, he looks like someone you would not want to mess with. Sexual dimorphism is another topic. This refers to the difference in size between males and females. In gorillas, males are twice as big as females. In modern humans, males are only slightly bigger. In Homo erectus, the difference was somewhere in between. The males were significantly bigger than the females, but not as extreme as gorillas. This tells us about their social structure. Large sexual dimorphism usually means there is a lot of competition between males. It suggests a harem structure. Moderate dimorphism suggests more cooperation and pair bonding. Homo erectus was moving toward the human pattern of cooperation. The growth rate of Homo erectus was faster than ours. We know this by looking at the teeth of children. A famous fossil is the Nariokotomi boy found in Africa. He was a Homo erectus. He was about 8 years old when he died, but he looked like a 12-year-old. He grew up fast. This means their childhood was shorter. They didn't have as much time to learn. They became adults quickly. This is a primitive trait. A long childhood is a modern human trait. It gives us time to learn complex things. The pathology of the bones is also interesting. Pathology means disease or injury. We found evidence of arthritis in the bones of Peking Man. They had sore joints. This is expected for people who lived a hard, physical life. We found evidence of dental problems. Some teeth had cavities, some had abscesses. This must have been very painful. Without dentists, a bad tooth could kill you. The infection could spread to the blood. We also found evidence of trauma. Some skulls have depression fractures. This looks like they were hit on the head with a heavy object. Was this an accident? Or was it violence? It is hard to say. Maybe a rock fell on them. Maybe they got into a fight. The life of Homo erectus was not peaceful. It was full of hazards. One of the most amazing things about the physical anthropology is the variation. Even within the cave at Jokudian there is variation. Some skulls are longer, some are rounder. This shows that there was genetic diversity. They were not clones. They were a population of individuals. We should also mention the vocal tract. The base of the skull can tell us where the larynx was. The larynx is the voice box. In apes, the larynx is high in the throat. In humans, it is low. This allows us to make a wide range of sounds. The skull base of Homo erectus suggests the larynx was descending. It was not as low as ours, but it was on its way. This supports the idea that they had some form of speech. The inner ear is another clue. The semicircular canals in the ear help us balance. The shape of these canals in Homo erectus is similar to ours. This confirms they were agile and walked and ran just like us. They were fully adapted to a bipedal life. When we look at the skeletons of ancient Asia, we see a success story. We see a body plan that worked. It worked in the jungle. It worked in the cold north. It worked for 1 million years. The thick bones and the strong muscles were perfect for their technology level. They did not have guns or bows and arrows. They had to get close to their prey. They had to thrust their spears. This requires physical strength. As technology got better, our bodies got weaker. We did not need to be as strong. We used tools to do the work. But Homo erectus was still very much a physical being. He relied on his body to survive. In summary, the physical anthropology of Homo erectus shows a creature in transition. The body was mostly human. The legs and feet and hands were human. The head was still a bit primitive. The brain was growing but not there yet. The face was reducing but still heavy. It is a perfect snapshot of evolution in action. It is not a missing link. It is a connecting link. It connects the apes of the past to the humans of the present. In the next part, we will discuss a sad and mysterious chapter in this story. We have talked about the discovery of the bones. We have talked about the analysis. But where are the bones now? The answer is we do not know. They are gone. The original fossils of Peking Man disappeared during World War II. It is one of the greatest mysteries in the history of science. In the next part, we will tell the story of their loss. We will look at the theories and the rumors. It is a detective story without an ending. This concludes part 6. We have dissected the ancestors. We have measured their skulls and weighed their bones. We have built a picture of a strong and resilient people. Let that image stay with you. The image of a sturdy figure standing against the wind. A figure with a heavy brow, but a human heart. Rest now. The lecture continues. The mystery awaits. Part 7. The Lost Treasure. We have now arrived at the most tragic part of our story. It is a story of loss. It is a story of mystery. For the last few hours we have talked about the discovery of Peking Man. We have talked about the excitement of finding the skulls. We have talked about the hard work of the scientists. We have built a picture of a great collection of fossils. We described the skulls and the teeth and the jaws. We described the tools and the evidence of fire. We made it clear that this was the most important collection of human ancestors in the world. But now I have to tell you that they are all gone. They are missing. The original bones that were found at Zhoukoudian are no longer in a museum. They are not in a laboratory. Nobody knows where they are. They vanished in the chaos of war. This is one of the biggest mysteries in the history of science. It is a detective story that has never been solved. To understand how this happened, we have to go back to the 1930s. The excavation was going well. They were finding new things every year. But the world outside the cave was becoming dangerous. The political situation in China was very unstable. Japan was expanding its empire. In 1937, the Japanese army invaded China. This was the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War. The fighting was brutal. The Japanese army occupied Beijing. At that time, Beijing was called Beiping. The scientists at the Cenozoic Research Laboratory were worried. The laboratory was part of the Peking Union Medical College. This college was funded by the Americans. It was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. Because the United States was not yet at war with Japan, the college was considered safe. It was a neutral zone. The Japanese soldiers did not enter the college, so for a few years the fossils were safe. They were kept in a safe in the laboratory. Franz Weidenreich continued his work. He was the German scientist we met in the last part. He worked very hard. He sensed that time was running out. He knew that the war would get worse. He knew that eventually the United States and Japan would fight. When that happened, the college would no longer be safe. Franz Weidenreich made a very important decision. He decided to make copies of everything. He made high-quality casts of the skulls. He used plaster and rubber. He painted the casts to look exactly like the real bones. He also took photographs. He took pictures from every angle. He wrote detailed descriptions. He measured everything. He put all this information in a book. In 1941, Franz Weidenreich decided to leave China. He was a Jewish man and he was afraid of the Nazis and their allies. He moved to the United States. He took the casts and the photographs with him. He wanted to take the real fossils too. He asked the head of the Geological Survey of China for permission. The head of the survey was a man named Weng Wenhao. Weng Wenhao was in a difficult position. He knew the fossils were in danger, but he also knew that the fossils belonged to China. They were a national treasure. He was afraid that if they left the country, they would never come back. He was afraid that the Western countries would keep them. This had happened before with other art and antiques. So at first, he said no. He said, The fossils must stay in Beijing. But the situation got worse. The Japanese army was tightening its control over the city. There were rumors that the Japanese wanted the fossils. They wanted to take them to Japan. They wanted them for the emperor. The American officials at the medical college were also worried. They told Wang Wenhao that they could not protect the bones forever. Finally, in November of 1941, Wang Wenhao changed his mind. He agreed to send the fossils to the United States. The plan was to send them to a museum in New York or Washington. They would stay there until the war was over. Then they would be returned to China. It was a temporary measure to keep them safe. The plan was set in motion. It was a secret operation. They did not want the Japanese to know. The staff at the laboratory began to pack the fossils. They had to be very careful. These bones were 500,000 years old. They were fragile. If you dropped them, they would shatter. They took 2 large wooden crates. These were military-style footlockers. They were made of strong wood. They lined the crates with cotton batting. They wrapped each fossil individually. They wrapped the skulls in tissue paper. Then they wrapped them in cotton. Then they wrapped them in medical gauze. It was like wrapping a mummy. They placed the wrapped skulls into small cardboard boxes. Then they put the small boxes into the big wooden crates. They packed them tight so they would not move. They filled the empty spaces with more cotton. They did not want the bones to rattle around during the trip. They packed the 5 famous skull caps. They packed the facial bones. They packed the jaws and the teeth. They packed the limb bones. They packed everything of value. This was the entire collection of Peking Man. It represented more than 10 years of digging. It represented the work of hundreds of people. It was priceless. The 2 crates were labeled. We do not know exactly what the labels said. Some say they were labeled as secret. Some say they were labeled as personal effects of a military officer. The goal was to make them look boring. They did not want anyone to open them and see the dragon bones. The crates were taken from the medical college to the United States Embassy in Beijing. The embassy was in the legation quarter. This was a special area of the city where foreign diplomats lived. It was guarded by the United States Marines. The Marines were the soldiers who protected the embassy. The plan was to send the crates with the Marines. The Marines were scheduled to leave China. The United States government had ordered the evacuation of all military personnel. They knew that war was coming. The Marines were going to take a train to the coast. Then they were going to get on a ship. The ship was called the SS President Harrison. It was a passenger liner that had been converted to a troop transport. The commander of the Marine detachment was Colonel William Ashurst. He was in charge of the evacuation. The crates were delivered to him. He was told that they were very important. He was told to guard them with his life. He assigned a medical officer named Dr. William Foley to look after the crates. Dr. Foley was one of the few people who knew what was inside. On the morning of December 5th, 1941, the Marines left Beijing. It was a cold morning. They loaded their luggage onto a train. The train was heading to the port city of Qinhuangdao. This city is also known as Qinhuangtao. It is on the coast of the WWII Sea. It is where the Great Wall of China meets the ocean. The train ride took all day. The crates were on the train. They were likely in the baggage car. Or maybe they were in the officer's compartment. We do not know for sure. The train arrived at Qinhuangdao in the evening. The Marines got off the train. They went to a military camp called Camp Holcomb. This camp was near the docks. They were waiting for the ship. The SS President Harrison was supposed to arrive in a few days. The Marines settled into the camp. They stored their luggage. They stored the crates containing Peking Man. They waited. Now we must look at the date. It was December 5th, 1941. 2 days later, on December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. This was the start of the war between the United States and Japan. Because of the time difference, it was the morning of December 8th in China. The attack on Pearl Harbor changed everything instantly. The Japanese army in China was ready. As soon as the news came, they moved to capture the American forces. They surrounded the US Embassy in Beijing. They surrounded the Marine barracks in Tianjin. And they surrounded Camp Holcomb in Qinhuangdao. The ship, the SS President Harrison, never arrived at the dock. The Japanese Navy chased it. The captain of the ship ran it aground to prevent it from being captured. The ship was wrecked. There was no escape for the Marines at Camp Holcomb. The Japanese soldiers attacked the camp. The Marines were outnumbered. They had no ship. They had nowhere to go. Colonel Ashurst had to surrender. The Marines were taken prisoner. They were sent to prisoner of war camps. They would spend the rest of the war in captivity. But what happened to the luggage? What happened to the crates? This is where the trail goes cold. This is where the mystery begins. When the Japanese soldiers took over the camp, they looted everything. They took the weapons, they took the food, they took the personal belongings of the Marines. Did they find the crates? Did they open them? Did they know what was inside? If a Japanese soldier opened a wooden box and saw a pile of old bones, he might have thought it was trash. He might have thrown it away. He might have dumped it in the sea. Or he might have thought it was interesting and kept it. Or maybe the Japanese officers knew about the fossils. Maybe they were looking for them. Maybe they found the crates and sent them to Tokyo. Maybe they sent them to a university in Japan. Or maybe they sent them to the emperor. Or maybe the crates were never at Camp Holcomb. Some people think the crates were left behind in Beijing. Some people think they were put on a different train. Some people think they were stolen by local looters before the Japanese arrived. After the war ended in 1945, the search began. The scientists wanted their bones back. Franz Weidenreich was in America. He was desperate to find them. The Chinese government was also desperate. They asked the American military for help. The United States military appointed an officer to investigate. His name was Frank Whitmore. He was a geologist. He went to Japan. He looked in the museums. He looked in the universities. He asked the Japanese scientists, but nobody knew anything. The Japanese scientists said they never saw the bones. They said they wanted to find them too. Frank Whitmore interviewed the Marines who had been prisoners. He asked Dr. Foley. Dr. Foley said he saw the crates at Camp Holcomb. He said he saw them in a warehouse, but he did not know what happened after the surrender. He was busy trying to survive. Over the years, many theories have come up. Let us look at some of these theories. Some are reasonable, some are crazy. But in a mystery like this, we have to consider everything. Theory number 1, the fossils were thrown away. This is the saddest theory. It suggests that the Japanese soldiers did not know the value of the contents. They looted the camp looking for guns and radios and gold. When they found a box of bones, they just dumped it. They might have thrown the bones into the harbor. If this is true, the fossils are at the bottom of the sea. They are covered in mud and silt. They are lost forever. Theory number 2, the fossils were buried. Some people think that the Marines buried the fossils before they surrendered. Maybe Colonel Ashurst realized there was no escape. Maybe he ordered his men to dig a hole and bury the crates to keep them safe from the Japanese. If this is true, the bones are still under the ground at the site of Camp Holcomb. People have tried to dig there. They have used radar. They have used metal detectors, but the landscape has changed. The camp is now a parking lot or a building. It is very hard to find a small wooden box in a big city. Theory number 3, the fossils were taken to Japan. This theory says that the Japanese officers found the crates and recognized them. They shipped them to Japan, but during the war, Japan was bombed heavily by the Americans. Maybe the ship carrying the fossils was sunk by a submarine. The ship called the Awa Maru is often mentioned. The Awa Maru was a Japanese ship that was sinking in 1945. It was carrying a lot of treasure. Some people think Peking Man was on that ship. The wreck of the Awa Maru has been found, but no fossils were found. Theory number 4. The fossils are still in China. Some people think the crates never left Beijing. Maybe they were hidden in the embassy. Maybe they were hidden in a private house. In the 1970s, a woman came forward. She was the widow of an American doctor. She said her husband had the fossils. She gave a picture to the police, but it turned out to be a false lead. Theory number 5. The fossils were ground up for medicine. This brings us back to the dragon bones. We know that local people used fossils for medicine. If the crates were stolen by looters, they might have sold the bones to a drugstore. The thought of Peking Man being ground up into powder and drunk as tea is terrible, but it is possible. There have been many searches. In the 1970s, the Chinese government launched a new investigation. They interviewed hundreds of people. They looked in archives. They dug up old sites, but they found nothing. In 2005, the Chinese government created a committee to find the fossils. They used modern technology. They appealed to the public for clues. Every few years, a new person comes forward with a story. An old soldier says he saw the box. A farmer says he found a skull, but every time it turns out to be nothing. Sometimes it is a deer bone, sometimes it is a fake. The reward for finding Peking Man is very high. This makes people invent stories. The loss of the Peking Man fossils is a tragedy, but there is a silver lining. Remember the casts. Remember the work of Franz Weidenreich. Because he made such good copies, we still know what Peking Man looked like. We can still study him. The casts are in museums around the world. There is a set in New York. There is a set in Beijing. However, a cast is not the same as the original. You cannot get DNA from a cast. You cannot do chemical analysis on a cast. We cannot find out what they ate by looking at the isotopes in the teeth of a cast. We cannot use new dating methods on a cast. The loss of the original bone means we lost the biological information that was locked inside. Modern science can do amazing things with old bones. We can sequence the genome of Neanderthals. We can find out the color of their eyes. We can find out if they had diseases. We could have done all this with Peking Man, but now we can't, unless we find them. Is there hope? Yes, there is always hope. Things get lost and found all the time. Maybe the crates are sitting in a dusty attic in Japan. Maybe they are buried under a warehouse in China. Maybe they are in a forgotten storage room of a museum in America. It is possible that someone has them and does not know what they are. Let us imagine the journey of the crates again. Visualize the wooden boxes. Visualize the cotton. Visualize the train moving through the winter landscape of northern China. The steam engine puffing smoke. The Marines sitting in their uniforms. They did not know they were guarding the crown jewels of anthropology. They just thought it was luggage. The train stops at the station. The sun goes down. The cold wind blows from the sea. The crates are unloaded. They are put on a cart. They are wheeled into a shed. The door is locked. And that is the last time we see them. The curtain falls. The war starts. The chaos begins. And when the smoke clears, the stage is empty. The story of the disappearance adds a layer of myth to Peking Man. He is not just a fossil. He is a legend. He is like the lost city of Atlantis. He is the ghost of the museum. The mystery keeps people interested. If the bones were just sitting in a glass case, maybe we would not talk about them so much. But because they are lost, we are obsessed with them. We must also remember that the excavation did not stop forever. After the war, the Chinese paleontologists went back to Zhoukoudian. They started digging again. In the 1950s and 60s, they found more fossils. They found a few teeth. They found a jaw. In 1966, they found pieces of a skull cap. It fit together with pieces found in 1934. So we do have some original fossils of Peking Man today. We have the ones found after the war, but the great collection, the 40 individuals, the 5 complete skulls, those are gone. The new finds are small compared to what was lost. The site of Jokudian is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is a museum. You can go there. You can see the cave. You can see the museum. You can see the place where the mystery happened. There is a monument there. It honors the discovery. It honors the scientists, but it also reminds us of the loss. The story teaches us about the fragility of science. We think that once we find something, it is safe. We think that knowledge is permanent, but knowledge can be lost. Wars can destroy libraries, fires can destroy museums. We have to protect our heritage. We have to be careful. The disappearance of Peking Man also shows the link between science and politics. The fossils were lost because of a war between nations. Science does not happen in a bubble, it happens in the real world. The fate of the fossils was tied to the fate of the empires. Let us pause for a moment. Let us think about the box. It is about the size of a footlocker. It is made of wood. It has metal hinges. It is heavy. Inside are the skulls wrapped in yellowing paper. The paper is brittle. The cotton is dry. The skulls are waiting. They are waiting in the dark. They have been waiting for 80 years. Maybe one day a construction worker will hit something with his shovel. Maybe he will pull up a rotten wooden box. Maybe he will open it. Maybe he will call a scientist. And maybe the headlines will scream again. Peking Man found. Until then, we can only wonder. The search continues in the hearts of the scientists. Every anthropologist dreams of being the one to find the box. It is the ultimate treasure hunt, but for now it is a cold trail. The snow covers the tracks, the sea covers the secrets. This part of the lecture has been a bit sad, but it is important. It is the reality of history. Things are not always perfect. Stories do not always have happy endings. Sometimes they end with a question mark, and that is okay. A question mark is an invitation to keep looking, to keep thinking, to keep dreaming. In the final part of our lecture, we will look at the legacy of these humans. We will move past the loss and focus on what we learned. We will summarize the importance of Homo erectus. We will see where they fit in the family tree. We will answer the question, where did they go? Did they die out? Or did they become us? We will wrap up our long journey through time. So rest your mind. Do not worry about the lost boxes. They are gone, but the knowledge remains, the story remains, and you are here listening to it. You are keeping the memory alive. That is what matters. This concludes part 7. The mystery is laid out before you. The clues are scattered. The detectives are baffled, but the night is calm. The lecture is slow. The words are simple. Let the mystery drift away. Let the sleep come. We have one more part to go, one more step in our journey. Part 8, Legacy and Conclusion. We have reached the final part of our lecture. We have travelled a long way together. We started in the jungles of Java with Eugene Dubois. We went to the dusty hills of China with Davidson Black and Pei Wenzhong. We saw the discovery of the first skull. We looked at the stone tools and the fires. We analysed the thick bones and the heavy brows. And we cried over the lost crates in the chaos of war. Now we must put it all together. We must ask the big question, so what? Why does it matter? Why should we care about these ancient humans who lived 1 million years ago? What is their legacy? The first part of the legacy is that they proved Darwin right. Remember, in the beginning we said that people doubted human evolution. They wanted a missing link. Java Man and Peking Man were that link. They proved that humans did not just appear on Earth fully formed. They proved that we evolved from more primitive ancestors. They proved that this evolution happened over a very long time. They also changed the map of human evolution. Before these discoveries, people focused on Europe. They thought the Neanderthals were the only ancient humans, but the Asian fossils showed that the story was global. They showed that early humans left Africa very early. They walked all the way to the Pacific Ocean. This was an amazing journey. They crossed deserts and mountains and rivers. They adapted to different climates. This shows the adventurous spirit of humanity. We now call these people Homo erectus. This species is one of the most successful species in history. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have only been around for about 300,000 years. Homo erectus was around for almost 2 million years. They lasted 6 times longer than we have. They were not failures. They were survivors. They lived through ice ages. They lived through volcanic eruptions. They persisted. What happened to them? Where did they go? This is a subject of debate. There are 2 main theories. One theory is called the recent African origin theory. This theory says that Homo erectus in Asia eventually died out. They went extinct. Then a new wave of humans came out of Africa. These new humans were Homo sapiens. They replaced the old Homo erectus. They did not mix. They just took over. If this is true, then Peking Man is not your direct ancestor. He is a distant cousin who has no living descendants. The other theory is called the multi-regional evolution theory. This theory was supported by Franz Weidenreich. It says that Homo erectus did not die out. Instead, they slowly evolved into modern humans in each region. So the Homo erectus in China evolved into the modern Chinese people. The Homo erectus in Java evolved into the modern Australian Aborigines. This theory suggests that there was gene flow between the different groups. They were not isolated. They mixed and mated. For a long time, the recent African origin theory was the winner. Genetics seemed to support it. But recently, things have become more complicated. We found that modern humans have some DNA from Neanderthals. We found that we have DNA from another group called the Denisovans. The Denisovans lived in Asia. They might be related to the later descendants of Homo erectus. This means the story is not black and white. It is possible that Peking Man contributed some genes to modern populations. It is possible that when the new humans arrived, they met the old humans. Maybe they had children together. So a little bit of Peking Man might still be alive in us today. This is a comforting thought. It means the lineage was not broken completely. Another legacy is the technology. The stone tools of Peking Man were simple, but they worked. They kept making them for hundreds of thousands of years. This shows a type of mind that is different from ours. We are obsessed with progress. We want a new phone every year. We want new cars. We want change. But Homo erectus was happy with stability. They found a solution and they stuck with it. This is a lesson for us. Maybe constant change is not always better. Maybe sustainability is about finding what works and keeping it. We also learned about the environment. The fossils of the animals tell us about the past climate. We know that the Earth changes naturally. We know that the deserts expand and shrink. This helps us understand our current climate change. It gives us a baseline. The story of the excavation itself is a legacy. It showed the importance of international cooperation. Scientists from Sweden and Canada, and America and France and China all worked together. They shared their findings. They overcame language barriers and political differences. They were united by curiosity. This is a model for science today. We need to work together to solve big problems. The lost fossils are also a legacy. They are a warning. They remind us that we need to take care of our history. Museums and libraries are important. They are the guardians of our memory. When we neglect them, we lose ourselves. Let us think about the individual Peking Man. Let us call him a person. Let us imagine him standing on the hill at Zhoukudian. He is looking out over the plain. He sees the herds of deer. He feels the wind on his face. He has a family to feed. He has a fire to tend. He is not thinking about the future. He is not thinking about us. He is just living his life. He does not know that 1,000,000 years later we will be digging up his bones. He does not know that we will be arguing about his name. He does not know that he will be famous. He is just a man trying to survive. But because he survived, we are here. We stand on his shoulders. His struggle made our lives possible. If he had not learned to use fire, maybe we would not be here. If he had not learned to make tools, maybe we would not be here. If he had not walked out of Africa, maybe we would not be here. We owe him a debt of gratitude. The study of paleoanthropology is the study of ourselves. It is looking in a mirror, a very old and cracked mirror. We see a reflection that is familiar but also strange. We see the heavy brow and the lack of a chin, but we also see the human eyes. We see the intelligence, we see the potential. As we close this lecture, let us summarize the main points one last time. 1. Eugene Dubois went to Indonesia and found Java Man. He proved that early humans lived in Asia. 2. The site at Zhoukoudian in China revealed Peking Man. This was a cave home used for thousands of years. 3. Peking Man and Java Man are the same species called Homo erectus. 4. They walked upright. They had brains smaller than ours but larger than apes. They used stone tools and fire. 5. The original fossils of Peking Man were lost during World War II and have never been found. 6. Despite the loss, we have casts and new fossils that allow us to study them. 7. They are a vital part of our human family tree. The lecture is coming to an end. The information has been delivered. The story has been told. I hope you have found it boring in the best possible way. I hope it has distracted you from your daily worries. I hope it has filled your mind with slow and steady thoughts of rocks and bones. Science does not always have to be exciting. It does not always have to be explosions and breakthroughs. Sometimes it is just slow accumulation of facts. It is the patient sifting of dirt. It is the quiet contemplation of a tooth. This is the kind of science that helps us sleep. So lie back. Close your eyes if they are not already closed. Let the image of the Dragon Bone Hill fade into the darkness. Let the sound of the Solo River fade into silence. The ancestors are resting. The fossils are sleeping in the earth. The mystery is safe. You can sleep now too. You have learned about the humans of ancient Asia. You have done your work. Your brain is full of boring knowledge. Let it settle. Let it weigh you down into a deep sleep. Good night, and sleep well. This is the end of the lecture.